Welcome to the Pencil Bob channel. I hope you enjoy my stories.
From the moment I moved into the townhome community in Pasco County, Florida, something about the parking situation rubbed me the wrong way. The driveways were cramped, just enough room for one car maybe if you parked carefully. With my garage packed to the brim with essentials like water softener equipment and storage bins, parking inside wasn't even an option. The guest spaces, always taken. It didn't take long to realize that parking was going to be a constant struggle, but I never expected things to spiral into the full-blown nightmare that it turned into. It began with a jarring fluorescent orange sticker slapped onto the driver's side window of a family member's car. The bold capital letters screamed, "Illegally parked," followed by an ominous threat about the vehicle being towed if the supposed violation wasn't corrected immediately. The car wasn't obstructing traffic, nor was it creating any hazard. Nearly all of it, about 95%, was neatly parked on the driveway, with just a small portion of the rear slightly overhanging the edge. It was barely noticeable, and certainly not enough to justify such an aggressive response. Yet here we were, confronted with a dramatic overreach that left us shaking our heads in disbelief. Frustrated but determined to understand what was going on, we turned to the community's private Facebook group for answers. It seemed like the logical place to ask questions and gain some clarity. Instead, we were met with a flood of condescension from the group's self-proclaimed moderator. Acting as though she were the official voice of the HOA, she responded with an air of superiority, declaring, "We've had to agree to certain rules set by the county, or we'll be fined again. All 4 tires and the entire rear end of the car must be on the pavers." Her tone made it clear that there would be no discussion, no room for compromise, just her word, and that was final. Still puzzled, I decided to push for more details, hoping to get some clarity on this parking rule that seemed so vague and extreme. Maybe I was missing something, but I wasn't about to back down without understanding it fully. That's when her demeanor shifted dramatically, and her response came out as sharp and biting as a slap. "No part of the vehicle can be on the street. If we don't follow these rules, the HOA gets fined $5,000 per incident, and those fines are passed directly onto the owners. We can't afford that." Her words felt like they were deliberately chosen to shut me down. She wasn't just explaining the rule anymore. She was using it as a weapon, making it sound like the entire financial future of the community hinged on a few inches of tire hanging over the driveway. The way she said it left no room for questioning, no chance to argue. It felt as if she was presenting it as an undeniable fact, a looming disaster that only we, the residents, could prevent. The way she laid it out, you'd think the entire HOA's existence depended on us obeying that one rule, and any slip-up would send the whole place into financial ruin. $5,000 per incident? That sounded outrageous, even by HOA standards. Something didn't sit right, so I decided to investigate. I've lived in this county for over 20 years, and I've never heard of such an excessive rule. I reached out to a couple of friends who work as Pasco County deputies, and even contacted Pasco Code Compliance. Their response? A unanimous rejection of the moderator's claims. The so-called rules she mentioned were completely fabricated. The county didn't have any laws requiring all tires to be on the pavers, and there certainly wasn't a $5,000 fine for parking violations. Armed with this information, I returned to the Facebook group and shared what I'd learned. But instead of a discussion, the moderator doubled down. She deleted the entire thread and blocked my account from the group. Just like that, any chance of open dialogue was gone. It felt like a blatant attempt to silence dissent and suppress information. This wasn't just a violation of common decency, it felt like an attack on our right to question policies that directly affected us as residents. Things spiraled quickly after that. A neighbor just 2 doors down had their car towed while they were unloading groceries. They'd only left it partially on the street for about 20 minutes, barely enough time to finish bringing everything inside. The towing company didn't hesitate to hit them with a $200 fee to get their car back. Another neighbor shared an even worse story. Their car was towed in the dead of night with no warning and no notice. They only discovered it was gone the next morning when they were rushing to leave for work, stranded without a way to get there. The anger in the neighborhood was building, and frustration rippled through conversations as more residents began sharing similar horror stories. I wasn't the only one outraged. Several neighbors approached me, sharing their own stories of tickets, towings, and heated run-ins with the HOA. One elderly resident, Mrs. Jenkins, said her car had been stickered for parking too close to the edge of her driveway, even though she's lived there for over 15 years without issue. "I can't park in the garage," she explained, tears welling up. "My husband's medical equipment takes up all the space. What am I supposed to do?" As we compared notes, a pattern emerged. The HOA, or rather, this one rogue moderator, seemed hell-bent on enforcing rules that didn't even exist, and she wasn't just spreading disinformation about parking. One neighbor swore she overheard the moderator telling a new resident that they couldn't hang holiday lights on their porch because it was a fire hazard. Another claimed she had insisted that grilling in the backyard was against county ordinance, which was flat-out false. The woman seemed to enjoy wielding her fake authority, leaving a trail of misery in her wake. Determined not to let her get away with it, I made sure to take screenshots of the entire Facebook conversation before she had the chance to erase the evidence. Armed with those receipts, I filed a detailed report with the sheriff's department, including her full name and even her workplace. Turns out, she's a Re-Max realtor. When I explained the situation to the deputies, they didn't seem the least bit surprised. One of them let out a tired sigh and said, "We see this all the time. HOAs love to blame us for their ridiculous rules. For the record, we don't ticket for parking unless it's something serious, like blocking a fire hydrant. And even then, the ticket goes to the vehicle owner, not the HOA." The officer went on to explain that the largest fine the county imposes for parking violations is $500, nowhere near the $5,000 threat the moderator had tossed around like a scare tactic. And as for towing, the sheriff's department made it clear. No one, not even the HOA, has the authority to tow a car off a public street unless it's actively blocking traffic or a fire lane. "Sounds like your HOA is just making up their own rules," the officer added with a shake of his head, his tone laced with a mix of annoyance and familiarity, as if he'd dealt with this kind of overreach far too many times before, even with the sheriff's validation. The reality of living under the moderator's oppressive grip remained a daily struggle. Residents were too scared to park anywhere other than their impossibly cramped driveways, which only made the already limited guest spots perpetually unavailable. Friends and family began avoiding visits altogether, unwilling to chance their cars being towed. What was once supposed to feel like a friendly neighborhood quickly devolved into something closer to a war zone, with everyone walking on eggshells just to avoid crossing the self-appointed queen of the HOA. The breaking point came when the moderator started threatening anyone who dared to speak up. One resident, who shared their own towing nightmare, was told they'd be banned from the Facebook group if they didn't stop spreading negativity. Another neighbor, simply asking questions about the fines, was completely booted from the group without warning. It felt less like a community and more like living under the thumb of a tyrant, where any hint of dissent was swiftly silenced with punishment. The mood in the neighborhood took a nosedive. Everyone was furious, but no one knew where to turn for help. Some residents floated the idea of attending an HOA meeting to confront the board, but others quickly shut it down. "It's a waste of time," one neighbor said, frustration thick in their voice. "The moderator's got them wrapped around her finger. She does their dirty work so they don't have to get their hands dirty." The sense of helplessness was overwhelming. No matter how hard people tried to fight back, it seemed like the cards were stacked against them. As of now, the parking mess is still far from resolved. The moderator continues to run the Facebook group like her own personal fiefdom, shutting down anyone who dares challenge her authority. Meanwhile, the rest of us are stuck tiptoeing around, constantly wondering if our cars will still be there when we step outside in the morning. It's draining, maddening, and honestly, it's making me question my decision to ever move here in the first place. But for now, all I can do is document every ridiculous move, hold on to a shred of hope for change, and park my car as close to the pavers as humanly possible. Because at this point, that's the only way to keep from being the next target in this twisted little community. Who exactly is the moderator of this private Facebook group, and what's their role? Is she a member of the HOA board, or is she just someone who took it upon herself to monitor the page? It's also worth asking whether this Facebook group is officially recognized by the HOA. If it isn't, then technically she has full control over how she runs it, as it's her personal space to manage. But here's the thing, there's nothing stopping you from creating your own unofficial Facebook group for the neighborhood and inviting your neighbors to join. By doing so, you can offer a space where people can express their opinions freely, without fear of being silenced. It's kind of like the basic principle of capitalism. If you provide something better than what's currently available, people will naturally gravitate toward it. If she's controlling the narrative in one group, then creating a space with more open dialogue might be exactly what the community needs, and once you've got a better option, others will start to see the value and follow suit. Don't forget, those screenshots can serve as powerful evidence in a formal complaint to the local real estate board. You can submit them alongside your complaint, highlighting that this individual is not only claiming to represent the HOA board, but is also acting in a way that could bring disrepute to the entire organization. Since she's a professional in real estate, her behavior falls directly under the scrutiny of her professional conduct. The real estate board would be the appropriate authority to investigate her actions, as this is related to her responsibilities and reputation as a realtor. Additionally, this situation could also be reported to the local franchise owner of her real estate agency. After all, her actions could seriously tarnish the image they've worked so hard to establish. A single bad actor like this can easily undo years, even decades, of trust and goodwill that the agency has built with its community. It's a risk they can't afford to ignore, especially if they value their reputation and long-term success. Why aren't you contacting the actual HOA board, not Facebook, to ask your questions? Most have monthly butt-kissing events, aka board meetings that anyone is meant to be able to attend and bring up problems. I'd suggest you print out the local parking codes showing it's legal in your county to park like that, and what bylaws the HOA has to say otherwise, and why that is. Plus, most HOAs don't drive around finding people to fine. Most of that is done by other neighbors who dob you in, so you have a Karen amongst you.
I would like to thank you for watching the video to the end. To encourage us to make more videos, please like, subscribe, comment, as well as share. Check out this other video if you haven't already.